Where is Sherman Oaks? Is that in LA?
Yeah, well, that's like the Valley, which is kind of LA, but kind of not.
Okay.
I want to say it's north or east, northeast-ish. It's kind of like
Okay.
to be a little bougie. I guess there's different parts of Sherman Oaks, but
Okay.
yeah.
I was thinking about Sherman Oaks because I was thinking about Dell. Dell is gonna come up today.
Dell's dope.
You probably like know Dell or something.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever personally met Dell unless it was like at a hip hop show and I was faded. But
yeah,
I met Dilla. I gave Dilla a flyer at the Dilla Madlib show. I think Doom was there too.
word up. He probably smiled like on a Donuts cover when he saw you.
I was like, "Hey Dilla, come to my beat battle." He's like, "Yeah, that's nice, dude."
Yeah, right. Be cool. All right, let's go ahead and get it cracking. Welcome. I am Rod Wallace, and I am pulling this up. I am Rod Wallace, and this is the Zero Noise Podcast, where we engage in progressive discussions about music, life, and everything in between with our guests. This podcast is also brought to you by Grove Studios, the 24/7 artist and production workspace. Whether rehearsing for your next show, producing a new song, doing a podcast, or shooting a video, Grove Studios is set up for the independent creator, what we like to call music artisans, actually. Right now, Grove is offering subscriptions that can help you get your project or next creation popping off. I've been saying cracking for like 10 episodes now. Popping off. To learn more, visit grovestudios.space. We're also sponsored by Leon Speakers, the premium dealer in home audio. They like make speakers that are built inside of like paintings. It's the coolest shit of all time. We're also brought to you by we're also supported by edigging.com and phonics with a q.com. You can go to phonics.com and pick up God's Favorite Drums Part 2 drum kit. God's Favorite Drums, Philip Drummond.
I think that's my life. I need God's favorite drums.
You do need there's actually God's Favorite Drums and God's Favorite Drums too. You need both. Phonics.com.
Yeah. Peace to the God.
niqs.com and edigging.com as well. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you are hearing or seeing the podcast. So here's the thing. My life's work is to lift music and hip-hop specifically as both a historical subtext and the product of American culture, a medium of liberation, and the soundtrack for the search for Black freedom collectively and individually. The hip-hop album as a primary source of critical discourse about critical discourse about life in America by those who create it. Therefore, we will not only discuss albums that are commonly regarded as classics or close to classics. I want to know about the music that changed the way our guests thought. Along the way, we'll explore how music speaks to who we are, who we desire to be. Art is not valuable if it does not challenge, if it does not ask, and if it does not respond. We acknowledge that music decorates time as art decorates space. I ask dope people to come and talk to me. They talk about who they are, who they've been, and what they do. I also ask them, obviously, to be ready to discuss this album that they love, that played a role in them becoming them. You will not hear the music we will discuss for many reasons, but you will never hear it the same afterwards. Therefore, this is a music podcast, but it is a people's podcast. And today, the person is Dr. Elliot Gann, and the album is Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde, an album that up until he said that I had never listened to all the way through. Didn't realize it until after you said that.
Man, that's the only hip hop album I can listen to all the way through, maybe aside from Blue and Mind State.
Absolutely. So welcome, Dr. Elliot Gann, who is based out of Oakland, Cali. Shout out to RTO Beats.
Yeah, shout out RTO, and that's, I feel like that's related to e-digging too.
Yeah, it is. You know who RTO Beats is?
Yeah, I met him virtually the other Sunday evening when Ment Plus was on that Sunday school beatsmaking live stream they do.
Okay. Oh, Griselda? When they did the Griselda beats?
Probably, yeah.
Yep.
RTO was on it, Ment was on it, and and I realized
Swifts.
Yeah,
DJ Y Body, DJ Y Body, RTO Beats, and I and Gadget are all part of Dirty Old Men.
No, I didn't know that, man. I didn't know. It all comes together, dude. Like, who else is part of it? What's his name?
Gadget, Y Body.
Oh, Gadget.
That's the producer. Gigahertz,
right?
Agent Smith 78, Jelani Beats.
You know, Brand OAK?
No. JB Swift.
Huh.
That Blessed Girl. Ooh, they gonna kill me.
She's sick, dude.
Black Mav, CX the producer.
Hell yeah.
Shout out to Hill Prop 97. Shout out to RTO and his work he's doing now with the Sidechain Society and Stolen Drums. And
big shouts to Stolen Drums and Sidechain.
Man, the dirty old man is an army, better yet a navy. And now I'm doing this and doing more engineering and beat making and trying to nonprofit like you in a way. So, but we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that.
Your beats are fire though, man. When you came on the Global Beat Cypher, you tore it up.
You know what? If I could make more beats, I need to make more time to make more beats, because all I'm doing now is not being in the beat maker's chair.
Dissertating, parenting, all the important stuff.
Yeah. And you know what I find is that the best beat makers don't have kids. That's what's crazy. Their beats become their kids. Do you have kids?
Not that I know of. There might be some in the chat or something. I don't know.
Academics. Here's the thing. So academics who are like, because we're going to talk about all this, but you're an academic, and we need to talk about what you're doing.
I don't have no kids.
So, but here's the thing. You're an academic. You're a psychologist.
Child psychologist at that.
You're a lecturer. You're a producer. You're a content creator. You are a musician. You facilitate a producer group in a way on a week-to-week basis. A very consistent producer. You have a very consistent platform, and you run a nonprofit. And do you still write?
As in academic or beat? Yeah. So we're working on. We got some research coming down the pipeline. And when I say we, shout out Dr. Raphael Travis, author of the Healing HipHop. Cop it now on Amazon or ebook. Right. And Dr. Alexander Crook from University of Melbourne. We did a study of some of the work that my nonprofit does in local schools. We did it in the Daly City School District, Jefferson Elementary, and we got some data that we're working on, kind of looking at examining the the therapeutic and wellness impact of beat making, the therapeutic beat making model, which has been my baby. And it's interesting because with the Global Beat Cypher, the intention there was to be therapeutic as like cross-cultural, etc. But it's really reminded me on a personal level, in terms of my personal and artistic practice, how important beat making is and how therapeutic it can be. Especially in the midst of pandemics, social change, so-called white supremacy, all of these really stressful things, right? And I say so-called white supremacy because we had a discussion on Clubhouse. I'm also a moderator for the hip-hop therapy discussion every Wednesday, led by JC Hall and Dr. Travis. Shout out to them, Jackie, and all the homies from that. There was a speaker. She's a PhD candidate. I want to say at like Penn State or something like that.
Yeah.
Really dope PhD candidate. And she brought up, she said, I say so-called white supremacy because it's not actually true, right? That's something that, we've been kind of brainwashed with.
Oh, okay. Right? Okay.
So I'm not doubting that it exists as a cultural phenomenon and agenda, but she said and I kind of like that. I like what she said. It's because it's clearly not true. It's a
right. Yeah, I've heard Francis Cress Welsing, I think, refer to it that way as well.
So I thought that was pretty cool. So I've been testing that out, trying to use that and think about that and kind of what that means.
So let me kind of back up. While I'm still introducing Dr. Gann is in a way kind of like what I refer to as an OG. So when I started studying how music production can be used in different formats in schools and figuring out what would work best, can you create a theoretical framework that affects music production programs or a basis of practice for music production programs? Elliot is one of the first people I encountered. And when I encountered his work, I started looking for him. and I started looking for Emery Petcower, and I started looking for Ian Levy, and I started looking for Raphael Travis, and I started looking for Chris Emden, and I started looking for Mike Lamont Hill, and all this. And what ended up happening was I ended up engaging with these people, you know. And so my research interest at this point is about how Black male teachers who are grounded in hip hop, how they use music in their classrooms and in their lives for multiple purposes. How they employ hip hop as pedagogy naturally, while also creating it outside. And my hope is to be able to create an album as part of my dissertation.
That's fire. Just like Dr. View. Shout out Dr. View.
Dr. View.
That's
AD Carson.
Bro.
All of these. And so I'm engaging with people, and people are, hit me up. And you just connected me with Jabari Evans, aka Knowledge from Kids in the Hall. I'm, JR, what's my man name? JR Swift from Ohio State.
Yeah, and what's his name? Rawls.
Jay Rawls from Ohio State. So it's a community, and reached out to me, invited me to the site, the Global Beat Cypher, which we'll talk about. And ever since then, we've been kind of intersecting in a lot of different ways. So what I like to do is kind of build back up to that place. Like, where are you originally from? And how did you first engage with hip hop?
So I was born in San Francisco, but I grew up in New York City, on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And how did I first engage in hip hop? I mean, I think probably, growing up in New York City, in Manhattan, even though I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, pretty bougie, upper middle class, whatever, it was all around, and it was part of popular culture. And I heard Insane in the Membrane, saw it on MTV, and was like, that's my shit. I want more of that. This is what I've been waiting for. Like
Black Sunday. Shout out to Cypress Hill. Shout out to Be Real.
And DJ Muggs, what an underrated producer.
DJ Muggs, absolutely.
Yeah, and
without DJ Muggs, there would be no Alchemist, in my opinion, in a way.
And then it was Scenario, Tribe Called Quest. 5th grade, R.I.P. Lauren Adolphson came in with the tape cassette, put it in the boombox, in the 5th grade boombox, and it was a really musical class. Like we were literally studying rock and roll in the 60s. I saw that was a crazy year.
We just talked about this a few podcasts ago. Who had the best verse on Scenario other than Busta Rhymes, obviously?
Other than Busta Rhymes. I mean, I'd have to hear it and really study it, because Busta, clearly is like the standout. Is Drez?
I don't have drops. I wish I had. I need drops, like sound effects. The best verse other than Busta Rhymes is Dinko D.
Man, honestly, Busta just feels that song, and it's just a posse cut that just, to me, is like it's like a whole. It's like a gestalt, right? It's like the definition of a dope posse cut, up there with, like, I don't know, Clan in the Front, or like the Graveyard, or like, any of those, or Don't Curse, like, just really, like, it flows beautifully. So that, but the beat was fire, because I couldn't really listen to like hip hop songs or rock songs or especially hip hop songs, where I didn't like the beat. And I'll make a lot of, contentious statements that may come across as unorthodox or unpopular, but to me, I'm really beat based, and I hear the beat first, and that
I'm not mad at that.
Okay, so that's really, really important to me, and the sound of the beat, the energy of it, the rapid fire, like, lyrics, and the video. I mean, the video is crazy too, because it's got that old, like, 90s tracker vibe, or 90s video editing vibe or whatever, right? And I'm pretty sure it was shot, like, I want to say part of it might have been shot on, like, Randall's Island, but in New York City, I'm guessing, right? And I could recognize the architecture of, like, the elevated train platforms, or just stuff like that, right? Yeah. It was there immediately where I was, but it was also not in my neighborhood. It wasn't part of, like, my culture, But it spoke to me in a way, aesthetically, and just the energy and all that. Just sonically, it was super dope and really catchy. It sounded really dope. So that was I think, you know, how I kind of fell in love with hip hop and beats at an early stage, and then it would be kind of reiterated, you know, like I like Naughty by Nature. I mean, I got, and again, I'm going to make a contentious statement here, but like I got a cassette single of Mass Appeal in 5th
We're
grade.
all about unpopular opinions here on the Zero Noise podcast.
So I got a tape cassette single of Mass Appeal by Gangstar in 5th grade at the 5th grade dance. And I thought, oh, this looks cool. Like Gangstar, I'll check this out. I put it in, and to be honest, I didn't really like get it or like it. Like I didn't, and to this day, I appreciate it. And I appreciate the fact that it's like a half-second snippet of like a dope jazz song that Primo heard, and like that's the essence of hip hop and digging and all that. But to me, you know, I'm a Moment of Truth kind of like Gangstar fan. You know, like Above the Clouds to me is like one of, if not the best, Gangstar beats, and maybe Primo beats. And that's a very bold statement to make. There's a lot of
I wouldn't say so. I have strong opinions about Gangstar. I've always thought that Step in the Arena was one of the most slept on albums of all time. The Moment of Truth was a classic LP to me, and it may have been because of its proximity to me graduating from college. But I mean, when you look at it in its totality, it was an evolution for DJ Premier that's mind blowing. I mean, you know,
like 909s or 808s or whatever on, you know, my steez. Like, who had done that before? Like, especially in that context.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. And then the chops and like Above the Clouds is just like one of the hardest beats ever. That shit is raw. It's got that. I think it's like an Asian sample or like Oriental sample. It's got. The verses are ill, the features ill, the beat, like you put that shit on and I want to rap. I'll, you know, rip a freestyle over that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's like quintessential East Coast boom bap hip hop, and the whole album is really dope. Like I wouldn't skip most songs on that. Just like Bizarre Ride, which I picked, I could listen to all the way through, and I wouldn't skip it because I thought all the beats were dope, and that's the way that I'm qualifying it. You know, like I think, and like I'll say, you know, like if you ask me what the best Tribe album is, I'll say Midnight Marauders, right?
Okay, easy.
But Scenario is the song that I'm still in love with. That got me into hip hop, aside from Insane in the Membrane, right?
Right.
Quintessential boom bap, posse cut, hype, the ill drum break, it's jazzy, so. Yeah, I mean, I tend to have kind of, I'm more esoteric or whatever, but yeah, that's, to me, I think I really fell in love with that, and then Naughty by Nature, and then the Beastie Boys, and Wu-Tang, and, you know, and so for me, retrospectively, looking back at my childhood, I literally think about and categorize the years by which hip-hop albums came out then. So like 93.
Absolutely.
Is like 7th grade, right?
Music decorates time.
Yeah.
I said that earlier. Music decorates time. And so you're a New York City kid.
Yeah.
And for people who grew up outside of New York City, you know, who loved East Coast hip hop like me, and I've said this before, New York City was like a fairy tale kingdom to us.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because we had never been there. I had no prospects to go to New York City when I was 12, 13, 14. But it seemed like, and I mean, we were acquainted with the challenges and things that was going on there socially or whatever, in the hood or whatever. But the music was so rich. And the thing that I always say, that the reason that the music doesn't sound the same as it does there is because the texture of East Coast hip hop has went away with them walking away from samples. And sampled drums, I should say, more so. There are, you know, you can get a good sound kit now, and you know, you can get one sound kit and you can make all your beats off of that sound kit for the most part. You know, Griselda obviously has kind of brought back that texture. That's why I think older heads tend to stick to Griselda, even though the content is the same as pretty much everything else that's going on out here.
A little slower, huh? It's like
a little slower.
Yeah. Yo, and by the way, Beat Butcher, I think that might be one of my favorite, like his drum kits and slappy drums too. Shout out to Stolen Drums and like the homie Decap as well. But like, I think Beat Butcher, I keep on coming back to those drums.
But you saw that in the Griselda thing the other day.
Oh, I mean,
if you stuck around for a while, they kept talking about it. It was like everybody seems to be using it. That's making that kind of music
because it's fire, because it's dirty, grimy, grungy. You know, and some of the you know, like someone was pointing out to me. Because I was, you know, I've been trying to get better at engineering, and you know, sometimes you got to roll off the low and the sub frequencies on those kits. They're so bass heavy and got so much energy in the low end, and that's cool. They hit, but like you also got to sometimes kind of roll that off to get more, you know, energy for other parts of the track. But man, and they're grimy, and that's just the kind of thing I like. Like I spent 10 years trying to emulate the 70s, 60s, 70s analog sound that I was sampling. So that I could like run mediocre to good synths and you know of whether it was like a you know like a piano or a mellotron or whatever to try to make it sound legit like a sample, you know, through like spring reverb plug-in, you know, and so you can hear this reverb on like a lot of those drums, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you take to rap, you take to the beats early on. So how did it first manifest itself in you making your own beats?
I mean, a precursor might have been like in 6th grade when I was messing around manipulating sounds on the computer at school, like with a 2-track audio editor, and was just blown away that you could record yourself into the computer, right? And with Macs, you could do that, and that was dope. And my school had a lot of really dope software, so I was messing around with that, and I had, from the time I was like 11 or 12, maybe younger, I remember having like beats in my head and riffs and melodies in my head. And I was really into like, you know, hard rock and, you know, stuff like that too, and wanted to like make my own music and channel it and get it out of me. But it was probably when I bought Deep Concentration, the shout out On Records here in San Francisco. I had heard, I want to say Less Than 6 by Cut Chemist on what was it? Whatever, something with Liquid Todd, Solid Steel Radio, I want to say, or something like that.
Okay.
Saturday night on K-Rock in New York, they had Liquid Todd had this show, and he would play underground hip hop, electronic music, right? So you'd hear like the Crystal Method, Fatboy Slim, Les Rhythm Digital, you know, and he played, you know, Cut Chemist, Less Than 6, right? And around that time, I also was getting into like Portishead, a lot of trip hop, Max and Quay by Tricky, Portishead, DJ Shadow. That turned me on to Soul Sides and Lyrics and Lyrics Born and all that. Black Alicious, Chief Excel, like the Bay Area Cali Underground stuff. But Deep Concentration came with an extra bonus DVD or CD, and my younger brother, had a computer. And so it came with Mixman Studio, where they took stems or loops from songs on the album, and you could essentially recreate it, like with a demo version, or, you know, make your own beats. And so I had gotten that, and it was either a Sony or like an Iowa stereo that had like a 1.5 second loop function.
Okay.
Dual tape deck, so you could, I guess, do the pause tape, but I was doing like the CD looping pause tape thing, trying to make
like shout out to Iowa, man. Shout out to Iowa doesn't get his flowers, man, right? for the mid to late 90s shelf systems, man. I
feel like it might have been an Iowa, it might have been a Sony though. But anyway, it had like the loop, the glitch function. I think it had a glitch function, a loop function, and like 2 other functions, kind of pseudo DJ functions, right? And they were pretty banging, like, you know, they were pretty banging stock, you know, speakers for this, you know, system. You know how you use your system, 3 CD changer, right? 3 CD changer and 2 tape decks, the radio. That was my shit.
Aux, like the aux, you know, you can plug in. I had the aux plugs on the front. Like real talk, like when I first started producing, my Iowa was my monitors for like the first like 5 years. Shout out to Mike Mosley. He came through and had some monitors when we set up in the apartment. But those were when I first started making beats, that was my monitoring system.
Me too. But so I started on my brother's computer, then started messing around with Propellerhead Rebirth, which was an emulator of like the 808 and the 909 or something like that, 303. And then I also had this other, it was like a tracker, but like a DAW that had these little check boxes you would check with as a step sequencer. And I started messing around with the first version of Fruity Loops with FL Studio, and then got my hands, that must have been, man, I don't know if that was sophomore or junior year, maybe senior year of high school. mind you, I'm in New York City. By junior year, I'm going as frequently as I can to Wetlands, Tramps, SOBs. Going, I saw, Slim Shady with the Outsiders, Shades of Brooklyn. I saw Black Star at Tramps. I saw KRS at Cinco de Mayo at Tramps. I used to listen to Halftime Show, WNYU. Shout out DJ Eclipse and DJ Riz. Like, I grew up listening to that, and there was a really cool woman who was on the show who moved to Cali. I don't know what happened to her, but she was super dope too. So I'm listening to like nonfiction, and like then I find HMV 86th Street. They were playing DJ Stretch Armstrong Volume 1.
Okay.
Like Lace the Booms, Company Flow, 8 Steps to Perfection.
Okay.
And then I'm reading these British like DJ magazines, and I get a copy of Herb magazine with Invisible Scratch Pickles on the front, and it's got ads for best album of the year, indie hip hop album of the year, Fun Crusher Plus, Company Flow. Or I already heard 8 Steps to Perfection. I'm buying it.
I didn't get introduced to Company Flow until Sound Bombing 2.
Bro, Patriotism.
Yes.
That one.
Yes.
Or was it
that beat was crazy.
Yo, that was crazy. And
LP had the hat on with the marker sticking out of the hat. That was the whole thing, man.
Yeah, and that guy with an ASR 10 made some of the dopest, grimiest beats. Like, I remember distinctly trying to use Rebirth and like that by Propeller Head on my brother's computer, recording it to like my stereo tape, whatever, and trying to make beats like Intrude Collude. And like, how do you make that shit? How do you make it sound like? It's just the grimiest shit, like the dirtiest, most like underground hip hop, like elemental, dirty, grimy shit. And so that was, I started on my brother's computer, and then when I went to college in '99, I got a PC. I remember going to, was it Sam Ash or Sam Goody where they sell the music?
Sam Ash.
Sam Ash. I went to Sam Ash, and I was getting the PSSL catalogs. I started subscribing to that. So I'd look at like the Akai S20, the MPC 2000 XL. Like, right. Oh, man, it's like $2,500, $1,000. Should I get an S20? That looks cool. Should I get an S9000? That looks cool. Oh, but doesn't, And then I go there, and the guy says to me, he says, "Look, are you gonna get a computer?" Yeah. I'm going to college. I'm gonna get a computer. It's romantic to get the hardware, to get the MPC.
I agree.
He said, just get the. I remember he used that phrase. He said it kind of it's romanticized, romantic. But you got a computer, just use the programs on the computer, man. That's like having a super powerful, So I actually, I listened to him, or I couldn't afford to buy an MPC, and my parents weren't going to get me one. And I remember actually I had a really dope. He wasn't my teacher. He was a pottery teacher, and did ceramics and shit. Like, and he was just cool as fuck. He would just hang out in the ceramics studio upstairs, the top floor of my school, where the was the art place was, right?
Right.
And I was never in his class. I didn't give a shit about ceramics, but this guy was just totally into music, and he was really fucking cool. And so he was one that like put me up on game that like Portishead and Tricky in '93 had both sampled Hell Is Around the Corner, the Isaac Hayes Walk On By sample. And there was contentious like who did it first thing and who's biting, blah blah blah. And I used to come in and like play him underground shit, and he would play me underground shit and put me up on game. And I remember saying to him, "Oh man, I really want to get turntables and like a sampler and make beats, but I don't know. What if I don't do it? What if I don't?" He's like, "Nah, man, you got to do it. You really got to do it." Like, and talk about a mentor, the importance of like an adult. And I think this is foreshadowing kind of what I do with Today's Future Sound and what what I'm all about, right? And the importance of mentorship and providing space and opportunity and encouragement and all that. So, man, bless Mr. I think it was Mr. Rubenstein.
Shouts to Mr. Rubenstein.
What a dope teacher.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't even my teacher, but we used to kick it during free periods and just talk music and beats and stuff. So, went to college, got the computer, found out about Cool Edit Pro. Shout out Peter Christegard.
Shout out to Cool Edit Pro.
Yeah, man. I was chopping samples and I made my first beats, real beats on Cool Edit Pro.
Right.
Did some crazy I did some crazy stuff on there with like reversing and reverb and the shortcut keys for chopping samples and jumping to like transients and waveforms on Cool Edit Pro. Yeah.
I learned about transients and stuff on Magic's music studio in the late 90s. Yeah. So actually I learned about transients in like 01, using Magic's Music Studio, where I called myself mastering a project that we had worked on. Me and Mike Mosley and the rest of the Double Negative people. Shouts out to them. The Product Volume 1 is what it was called. So I get it. Absolutely.
No, and so I was multi-track recording on there too, like singing on it and trying to rap. And then Sonic Foundry Acid was fire before Ableton with the auto, time stretching and like tempo preserving, pitch shifting, like crazy. So I used to make loops, program drum breaks in FL Studio, or bring in drum breaks I found on the internet or ripped off of vinyl, and put it in, like arrange it in Sonic Foundry Acid, because I didn't know really how to use the sample chop or the transient chopping and all that shit in Acid. It was just really quick and fast for, like, you could do stuff live, you could like just arrange shit. So I was doing stuff in there. I think I tracked some vocals for songs in there too a little bit. And then FL Studio began to use that, and was using that too, but then found out that you could actually time stretch samples in FL Studio. Who knew? With a little knob. I didn't know for like 3 years until Equilibrium told me. I used to, So anyway, that was dope. And then I got real into FL Studio, and man, I was collecting records since I was probably 12 or 11, because neighbors left out stacks of hundreds of records. Right. In my apartment in New York where I grew up, there's like the garbage room that, like, the back door of the apartment opens to the like we put the trash, and then there's a service elevator that goes up and down, and they grab it. So the neighbors left out like 500 vinyl records, like Nilsson Schmilson and all sorts of random stuff that I probably should have sampled, never listened to.
Captain and Tennille and all that.
Yeah, a lot of white people records and pop and all that kind of stuff. But it was cool, man, because I started to build my vinyl collection, and I had that, and so I was essentially digging before I knew, or record collecting before I knew what it was. Even as a kid, I had a Fisher Price turntable, and I used to do my own radio shows and like put on the Beatles records and like narrate and record it and whatever. So I was kind of DJing before I knew like what a DJ was, right? Lightweight. But then I had those records, and then I started really digging when I was when I got into hip hop in high school, when I really got deep into like underground, like electronic music and hip hop, and really deep into hip hop culture, and wanted to like do it, and so then I had records, and I was digging, and I started buying vinyl hip hop records. Like I remember going to Fat Beats probably as a junior in high school, maybe sophomore, junior, definitely senior, and buying records there, and like Ill Bill, I think, was the manager, and like Eclipse worked there from Nonfiction, and like Percy P would always like slang his CDs outside of Fat Beats in New York,
right.
It's fucking amazing.
So yeah, you definitely were there. At what point did you become Philip Drummond? Was it at this time after Fruity Loops, or was that later?
So yeah, I went back to New York, and it was a younger kid from
after graduating from college.
No. I was visiting on like spring break or something.
Oh, okay.
And I had some stupid name like DJ Fraggle Rock, because everyone was T Rock, this Rock, and I thought, I wasn't that serious, and I was kind of jokey, and I wasn't, I thought it was funny. But this kid Lexi Benaim, who was dope, I want to say, like, this kid was so fucking ahead of everything, and he was like a high school kid. He's like, yo, you should check out Saigon. This is before Saigon blew up. He's like, yo, there's this dude Mark Ronson, who's like this white dude who's a dope DJ. You should check him out. Like, he knew all the dope shit. And I think he had a manager in high school. He was like rhyming, and so I wanted to do shit with him. And he's like, yo, man, you should call yourself Philip Drummond. And I was like, yeah, actually, that's dope. You're right. I should call myself Philip Drummond. That's kind of dope. And, I think I just took it on because it was a funny cultural reference, and like, and it was kind of dope. And it, like, I don't know why, but it has some kind of like resonant cultural value in hip hop too, from what I can tell. Like, anyone who I tell that to laughs, who was like 30 or older, you know what I mean? But maybe it's just a pop cultural reference or something like that. But it was interesting because then when I don't know if unconsciously I thought about this, but I think Philip Drummond was on like the Upper East Side of Manhattan, I want to say. He's a rich white dude,
yeah,
presumably in New York, right? And I grew up on the Upper East Side, came from a pretty well off upper middle class family. So it wasn't like denying, who I was, or the fact that like, I didn't grow up in the hood. Like I grew up in a nice neighborhood and went to a private school. And, I think that was because it was an interesting journey, like getting into hip hop, underground hip hop and old school hip hop. And like starting to think like, oh, maybe there's a place for me here. Like maybe I can participate in this in an authentic way, and it's not because, in the 90s, there was like the W word, and there was like, white parents telling their kids like, don't try to be black, or don't do this, or don't listen to hip hop or whatever. And there was like, it was the dominant cultural medium in our form, especially in New York City. But,
absolutely.
I didn't grow up like, like Unlearn the World, who's, one of my peers and like same age, grew up like being able to look at the South Bronx from his rooftop in Washington Heights.
Right.
And being like Dominican, like growing up in there, grew up in that.
Right.
My parents weren't listening to hip hop. My uncle didn't listen to hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, it was a youth culture thing that that was like the dominant cool, I was also into like, grunge and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and rock and stuff like that too. But certainly more and more as the 90s went along, like
hip hop was the cool. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And, shit, I remember going to see Kids with my mom in the theaters in like 7th grade.
Hip hop was the cool. Hip hop has been the cool at least now for 40 years.
For sure.
When you consider, commercially, probably about the last 32, 33, 34, maybe. But it's been the cool all that time. So it is the dominant form of cultural expression in youth culture during the last half century. And for us to still be fighting for it to have its place in education is kind of ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
It's because it crosses so many lines of or blurred lines of morality and intellectualism and organization and government, and it's because it crosses those lines and kind of blurs all of it that makes it still so difficult for people to understand that it is a literacy. But don't get me started.
No, I mean this is part of like what I've dedicated my life to, is trying to justify
absolutely
the therapeutic, educational, cross-cultural applications of it,
absolutely,
and to create like not only from like a research and academic standpoint, but really from a practical and practice standpoint. And shit, dude, I remember taking frames of mine by Gardner off my parents' bookshelf in New York when I was like 17, 18, and thinking like, holy shit, hip hop culture is all about multiple intelligences and multiple literacies. And
absolutely
can be used as an educational vehicle, can be used as such. And like, holy shit, like this is dope. Like I want to do that. And that being a driving force in what I wanted to do when I got to college. And even like knowing that I was going to go to graduate school for psychology, but like thinking more about the educational applications even before I applied for grad school, like as a junior or senior, maybe a junior in college.
Yes.
Reading, like there's this program here called the DJ Project, which is going for like 25 years or something like that. Shout out DJ Quest. It's in San Francisco. It was featured in the movie Scratch, right? And I was at the premiere of Scratch in San Francisco. It was really dope. Bulletproof space travelers, space hamsters behind me, like Quest and Mars is going wild. But they feature this program in it, and I saw a newspaper article in the SF Bay Guardian about the DJ Project, and they were doing essentially what I wanted to do and what I thought was really dope. And I thought, okay, yeah, you can do this, and it has tremendous value, and like people are doing this,
right?
And why wouldn't we link this to the multiple intelligences that Gardner talks about? Why wouldn't we use this as what we now call like culturally responsive or culturally sustaining, pedagogy, modality, this shit's dope. And you learn stuff. And hip hop, he's not too popular now. And, I have my feelings about, Kubert's political stances and statements he's made. But I remember reading a quote from Kubert in the Invisible Scratch Pickles article, the cover article from Urban Magazine, which was what got like really introduced me even deeper into underground hip hop and electronic music. And I remember not only him talking about taking shrooms and scratching, but talking about knowledge and how knowledge and learning was like valuable and cool.
Right.
And the first time that I had linked that within, like, I think for me, explicitly hearing that and link that within like hip hop and thinking like, oh shit, I can learn and that can be cool. I gain knowledge and like that can be cool. Okay, like okay.
Right.
You know, I don't think I was really like cognizant fully at that time about, you know, the 5%ers and you know, like Wu-Tang and like the idea of knowledge and knowledge.
I'm glad you said that. The 5%ers are gonna come back later. I'm glad you said that. Keep going. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, like I think it was later down the road after I read that article. And I don't know. I mean, who knows what they knew or what they knew when or what they were thinking.
Right.
We just have these like highlight reels and our memories are very distorted, whatever. But I remember that being like kind of a paradigm shift or like a turning point where I thought,
right.
Oh, these things can coexist. And like that's really there and that's really dope. And so as I learned more and more about like, you know, old school hip hop culture and hip hop culture as a culture, it was this beautiful like integration and synthesis for me, and it was really mind-blowing. And I remember that, you know, and that's really important when you're like an adolescent and developing your identity and trying to find your identity and piecing things together and trying to figure out like how do you integrate all these seemingly disparate and different things, and who are you and what are you about and what inspires you and like, you know, lights your fire, you know, inspires you. So that to me that was really dope and that was really important. And and I really just wanted to generate. I wanted to produce. I wanted to make beats. I wanted to scratch. I wanted to scratch on my beats. I wanted to learn how to fucking break. I wanted to do graffiti. You know, I had all these dope graffiti mags and I tried it. I was terrible at it. Like
it has to be said though that when you're able to develop a skill set that has value in society, and you're able to kind of apply in some way, shape, or form your passion.
Yeah.
You know the old thing about if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
I mean, I do a lot of fucking admin work, I'll tell you that. And I don't like that shit.
You said what?
I do a lot of admin work.
Yes. Me too. I do a gang of admin work. And you know, at the root of it is still hip hop. At the root of it for me is still music. But it does I feel very fulfilled.
Yeah.
In that, you know, I'm really into activist leadership. I'm really into how activist leadership can set the stage for what I call culturally fluent practices in a school. Because I think you got to be culturally fluent to really be successful in non-mainstream schools. You have to envelop yourself in a way to understand. So,
or you have to be so open and humble.
Yes.
And willing to learn.
And be the student, yes,
exactly. That yeah, because like I've seen that. Like I in graduate school, in my second or third year placement, I was with this older, middle-aged white lady from the suburbs. Actually, grew up in San Francisco. Not she wasn't that wealthy, but she was, you know, married to the, you know, wealthy Republican dude, whatever, who lived out in the suburbs. But this woman knew what the sideshow was, and in Oakland, like most, you know, maybe you've heard about it now, but like most, you know, upper middle class white folks who live in like Pleasanton or wherever, like not in Oakland, don't know what the sideshow is. And she knew what the sideshow was because she had worked with, you know, young black kids and, you know, who like came to trust her because she was genuinely interested. And, you know, she's this like older, square kind of white lady mom, but she, you know, Nancy was dope. Like that was one of the dopest, most intuitive natural clinicians I've ever worked with. And she and I ran a group for like, you know, kids at an elementary school. And it was so dope working with her because she was curious and she was open and she was humble and she really was interested in people. And I think if you can be humble and
literate,
cultural humility and just legitimately interested and willing to listen, like you can learn. So I think that said, but she probably had certain kinds of cultural and socio-emotional, emotional literacy and capacities that like most people don't have or as developed as that, right?
Right. So you're a psychologist and you're, you know, you, like I was saying, you have you're a psychologist, a practicing psychologist. You have the ability to practice, and
I'm licensed.
You're
Could
licensed.
practice, but I don't see therapy clients.
Right.
Like I could, but I run the nonprofit, and I've been focused on like the therapeutic beat, like therapeutic as opposed to therapy proper.
And that's what I'm getting at. So in my research, very brief research, very informal, small surveys, things of that nature, a little bit of quantitative. I'm finding that producers that are above the age of 18 tend to be more adaptable to new technologies. People who make beats nowadays who are above the age of 18, they're adaptable to new technologies. They understand that their comprehension of music production technology translates over to other forms of technology, say design software, this, that, and a third. They understand the value of YouTube as a teaching tool, a teaching and learning tool.
Yeah.
They understand, they tend to still be mad scientist kind of people in a way.
Yep.
They tend to obviously love anime and cartoons and video games in the same way.
Have you read Jabari's article, by the way?
No.
It's like, this is what, like, it's fire. It's like, that's why one of the reasons why I did that intro. It's fire. Like it's about literacy, you know, using hip hop in the classroom, all this stuff. Yeah, totally.
Beat makers have similar qualities. Another thing that I found out about them, and I knew this informally, but the survey, I sent out a survey to producers or whatever, and it kind of confirmed it. They really fear legitimizing their music through PROs and things of that nature. Although it is intended to, in theory, to protect them, they do feel as though it's something that it's not just a literacy they don't have. It's something that they literally do not want to do. And that's something that bears interest too. But as I built that knowledge in order to be able to inform a music production program, during that process, I encountered your research, and I encountered what Ian Levy is doing, and I encountered what Raphael Travis is doing. So can you tell us just a little bit, just a brief breakdown of what therapeutic beat making actually is and what you've kind of found out about it?
Yeah. So it is a model, a theoretical model and a practical model, meaning you can do therapeutic beat making, right? And the idea is that it's not therapy proper, right? Where there's you have either a diagnosis or a treatment plan and like symptoms and specific things you're going to work on, and then you meet, and it's everything you say is confidential. Like that's therapy. Those are the frames of therapy, right? You have to be a licensed clinical psychologist, licensed clinical social worker, licensed clinical mental health counselor within, who's board certified by the state. Right. So this is stuff that I'm supervising, but that also non-clinicians, musical mentors, teaching artists, hip hop teaching artists are doing with a therapeutic intent, meaning it's meant to help perhaps alleviate stress, create healthy habits, express oneself. And so there are three main dimensions of the therapeutic beat making model. So if someone's like, yo, how is beat making therapeutic, right? I will break it down and explicitly tell you how and why from a metacognitive, metapsychological, and neurophysiological perspective. And to throw all the jargon aside, so there's basically three domains, right? There's the relationship, which we know the relationship is the number one predictor of positive therapeutic outcome across all theoretical orientations and interventions, period, right? Like if you don't have a relationship with someone, trust them, there's no way you're going to be able to really share, be vulnerable, be comfortable, be regulated, take all the positive things from therapy. And I think it was 2012, the American Psychological Association put out a press release stating that the meta studies, the research showed that the relationship was the number one predictor of positive therapeutic outcome. So the relationship. So the relationship, we can rapidly engage, right? So pull people in like immediately in the moment with beat machines that light up, that make dope sounds, that enable them to express themselves and make loud, cool sounds and make beats like they hear, like they know what's, culturally familiar, what they like and love and identify with. So we can do that. We can engage, build rapport, and I would argue sustain the relationship through that activity, right? And so that's like the relational or interpersonal domain or realm. So that's at the core, like, and this is such a problem both in educationally, and you look at the core of education too, you have to have a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Part of being culturally responsive is meeting, or culturally sustaining or culturally literate or whatever you want to call it, is meeting someone where they're at in their world, where they're at. And, and each individual has their own preferences, right, too. But there's a dominant cultural modality, and hip hop really is the dominant cultural modality, but it also is so flexible in the way that it samples, flips, remixes, borrows, steals, appropriates. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way, right? It's really incredible in that way. It's a remix culture. So it can be flexible. And so I may not be an expert in making cumbia or like house or whatever, metal, but like as a hip hop producer and beat maker, I have certain skill sets that allow me at least to sample or to know how to start to construct something like that, right?
You can learn the rules of it. You can learn the rules that exist in making that music.
Yeah. And so, okay, so then relationally, it's really powerful using beat making and using hip hop culture, period. But there's something about beat making because it's non-verbal and it's not as naked, I think, and it's more, I don't mean primitive in a bad way, but like pre-verbal, right? Non-verbal than rapping or having to verbally articulate it, right? As opposed to like hitting pads, which I think also has implications for trauma and the neurophysiological regulation. We'll get to that in a second. But so the relationship, the interpersonal aspect of it, that's one domain.
Okay.
The second is the expressive domain. And so I'm talking about both this idea of catharsis, right?
Right, absolutely.
Elaborate and articulate one's neurophysiological, emotional, and experience and even cognitive stuff through like sublimating it or channeling it. Sublimation is a more advanced defense, and I think some people misuse it. But sublimation is the idea of expressing, Freud's idea of like sexual and aggressive urges, like, things that we're not allowed to express. And you're not supposed to go around like, raping, killing people in the street, or just have to like humping someone's leg like a dog does or whatever, right? So we have to sublimate that and channel those urges and express them in socially acceptable ways through painting or music or football. And once you get to like football and, Mortal Kombat or Ultimate Fighting, it's not really so sublimated. In my opinion, there's some rules.
Right.
It's so far away from actually killing someone or fighting someone or hurting them. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. So you can channel it. So the idea of catharsis is Freud's idea of releasing energy, aggressive, sexual, libidinal energy, etc., right? Like unacceptable urges in a socially acceptable way. And you can put that into art and then capture some of that. So the idea of that release that also is captured, in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy through the talk therapy, the talking cure, as you call it. But then also the neurophysiological regulation that happens when we hear repetitive beats that can put us into trance-like states that down-regulate, that calm down our stress response, right?
Wow. Absolutely.
From an elevated fight or flight state, and I would argue sometimes as well, there's not only fight or flight. They used to be just fight or flight and this theoretical model of like how humans work. And then they're like, well, what about the dissociative states when someone like just they're totally dissociated, their eyes are blank,
they freeze,
right? And so faint and freeze, right? The 4 F's, fight, flight, faint, freeze. So faint and freeze are different kinds of dissociated states. They also come from dysregulation,
right?
Near-death experience, argue, right? So then you collapse, you lose your shit. You literally, people like, they
faint.
Yep, they faint, and because you perceive yourself to be in such a near-death situation, imminent death, that you can't fight or get the fuck out, but take flight, right? And so I think we can also potentially use that and kind of the principles that we're thinking about in terms of hip hop and how it regulates and beats to maybe help pull people in a gentle way out of those states. Now, I don't have a whole lot of like evidence yet, or I think I've never done that. Just kind of intuitively as a kid, like I went to Croatia and worked with like war traumatized Bosnian Muslim kids when I was 18, right out of high school. And I remember there was a little kid who had lived in a refugee camp with his mom, and his younger brother. And I remember the other kids were like picking on him at night. It was like a camp where they brought all the kids to the coast and they would stay together. And I think some kid had done something to him or hit him or attacked him or something. But anyway, he was curled up in fetal position on the floor. And just kind of intuitively, I've always been a pretty intuitive, empathic person. I was raised by mental health clinicians, by psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, whatever. But I think I'm also like a pretty intuitive person. So I just kind of came in and gently kind of rubbed his back and spoke to him in a low, soothing tone. And kind of, he started, his muscle tension decreased. He started to let go. I was regulating him through physical touch, repetitive rhythmic physical touch. And low bass frequencies, I think also, they vibrate, that you can feel it in your chest, right? They affect the body. My step granddad actually was one of the first people that I know of in like Western medicine and psychoanalysis and psychiatry to really talk about, because he used to work with people who were in cults, and he deprogrammed cult members. And so he would write about the rhythmic rituals of using low frequency bass drum tones, right? In the rituals where they beat the drum and walk in the circle and program the new cult members, right? And so I have a manuscript of his where he started talking about that. So he was one of the people that made me kind of think about that from a Western clinical, psychoanalytic, neurophysiological perspective. He also mentored the guy who's like one of the foremost trauma expert in the world, Bessel van der Kolk, who talks about this, and who I've talked with, I don't want to say extensively, but I've talked with explicitly about like what the program and what we do, and puts on this international trauma conference. Long story short, we were supposed to present there last year. COVID happened, but it was going to be myself, Dr. Raphael Travis, JC Hall, who runs the HipHop therapy studio in the South Bronx, Rhythmic Mind, and their name's amazing, who, more focus on like freestyle therapy ciphers and that kind of stuff, and some of our other colleagues. But anyway, so this idea of repetitive rhythmic elements and predictable beats where trauma is dysregulating and unpredictable, you have the repetitive beats that can put us into trance-like states. I mean, music can also dysregulate us too. It depends, right? But it can also regulate us. And that's why I think people talk about like getting open, or if you've seen like From Mambo to Hip Hop, the guy talks about, and I quoted this in the Therapeutic Beatmaking article, where the guy talks about how when you're gelling together as a band, or hearing the breaks, and it's like the floor lifts out from underneath you, right? It's like kind of transcendental, right?
Absolutely.
And like flow state, profound feelings of connection, rhythmic regulation, connecting, being unified by a single beat. Then that's pretty profound, and that's been there, in West African rhythms and drumming, absolutely, for hundreds, thousands of years, and in all cultures like have that. But so coming back to that, both the idea of catharsis and also rhythmic regulation in a non-threatening, culturally familiar way,
right?
That's fucking cool, and you get to do something, and someone's not like, yo, tell me your deepest feelings, right?
Yeah,
I'm here, right?
And it's based in technology.
Boom, exactly. And technology is part of youth culture, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So you have that. So there you have the relationship, the expressive domain, and then we also have the self-concept domain. And so I'm thinking self-concept, I'm thinking both about self-esteem, right? We have our ideal sense of self. Freud said we have our ideal sense of self. The more we, the better we do, the more we like do the dishes, do our homework, we come closer to our ideal sense of self, our self-esteem increases, right? And some people have more like, higher self-esteem. Some people have better modulated, better regulated self-esteem. It doesn't fluctuate as much. But the idea is that like if you master a set of skills, right, or literacy, a skill set that's valuable to your peers, to your parents, to your culture, whatever. But to you too, particularly important, your self-esteem will go up, but so will your the idea of like self-efficacy, the idea that you can have an effect on the world and that you're effective and can do things that impact others and have a kind of social impact and externally validated and observable impact. And so you help a kid or a person or an adult or whatever make a beat. Like I can't tell you how many times I've seen like the shift, the eureka moment, the paradigm shift in someone's like body language and face, and they go, oh, like when I showed them how to program a break,
right,
FL Studio or on the push,
right,
or they hear what they've been hearing in music and have a different understanding of it because they have a new literacy, and then they can look at it from a critical perspective and deconstruct, and they can construct because they now can deconstruct because they learn to construct, right? And so the literacy teaches you to think critically then and have something to hold it up against and understand it in a much deeper way. And so I've seen that happen with adults, I've seen it happen with kids, where you show them how to program a break or make a beat and they're like, oh, and it's like they've been waiting.
Right.
You know, and like, so I got my T-shirt on that is like this is our calling card and our saying like this. We said this.
Oh man,
right? So we had
absolutely
hundreds of volunteers. By the way, we have the sequel to this shirt is about to drop. And pun intended, I guess. It's called "Dropping Science." ... in the lab.
And where's that shirt?
You could go to today'sfuturesound.bigcartel.com or go to today'sfuturesound.org. Literally, I'm picking up the shirts tomorrow. Limited edition. We were almost completely sold out of the I wish I had this when I was a kid hoodies and t-shirts. We got like a couple extra smalls left of hoodies and t-shirts, and then that's a wrap for that.
That's not gonna fit me, bro. Okay, so
we'll work on that. But
all right. So to put it plainly, there are several benefits to beat making from a therapeutic standpoint for novices and veteran producers.
Multitude.
Absolutely.
There aren't like potentially negative things, right? Just like anything, right? But
absolutely.
I would argue absolutely. And anyone who wants to come against me and make an argument that like, you know, beat making doesn't involve multiple literacies, doesn't have educational value, doesn't have.
Has anybody ever tried to refute that?
No, but I think people use denial. You know, like from an institutional standpoint and societal, like if you put the word hip hop on a grant proposal, and maybe it's getting better now, but like, and we found this in Australia too, with the school we work with in Australia, who submitted for a technology grant, and they're like, we hate to say it, but we shouldn't have put hip hop on there. We probably would have gotten this grant if we didn't put hip hop. Now,
and so for me, to put it plainly, from what I've experienced, you already know what the answer to that is and why it's that way. It's because it's grounded in blackness.
Exactly, 100%.
One thing I frequently say is I didn't really tell in a professional forum, although I had helped to begin a music production program at the high school that I was an administrator at and everything. Even though I had been a recording engineer for years and years and made beats and understood this and wanted to study this and that, I did not share professionally that's what I was doing or that's what I was into until I came to the college level.
I believe
because even in an urban school, even from the administrator's seat to say that this is something that I was interested in caused me a certain level of anxiety about how I would be perceived as a school leader and an instructional leader. So I completely get it. I completely understand that.
I think it's only starting now or the past couple of years that's not completely the case, or it's not the case after kind of like I don't know whether I want to call it like post George Floyd and the second or whatever wave of Black Lives Matter and kind of I feel like now mainstream for the most part, even if there's like subtle aversive racism, it's
pushback,
right? But like it's no longer cool to like you can't. It's not a good look to deny white supremacy as a white person. I think these days, maybe in certain neighborhoods, communities, but I feel like there's been at least a shift. And now, you know, even if it's superficial or whatever, like surface, you know, like but at least there's been a mainstream shift where now, like, where I used to talk to people, let's just say people that I know and love, and try to talk to them about like white supremacy and white privilege and, you know, that kind of stuff 10, 15 years ago. And they weren't really trying to hear it. And they were trying to say that like Black Lives Matter is this or that. Now folks have changed their tune.
And DEI, culturally relevant pedagogy, all of these things are the hot button topics. And I think that it's up to the academic community, the hip hop ed community, to make sure that it doesn't go by the wayside the same way that service learning went by the wayside. And scaffold, when differentiation became the order of the day, because there's educational trends that happen, and we have to make sure that that's not the case. Now, I want to talk about a couple of other things before we talk about the album, because we could talk forever about beat making. Right? Can you talk a little bit about the Global Beat Cypher, and kind of tell the people about that and how that started briefly, and what it's about these days?
Yeah. Global Beat Cypher started with the COVID lockdown and racist, anti-Asian American AAPI attacks. My sitting here where I am right now thinking, what the fuck is going on in my community? How can this possibly be happening, right? And feeling terror and helpless and shame and guilt and a need to do something, and feeling helpless, and also with COVID, a sense of isolation, social isolation, anxiety, depression, fear, terror, all these things. And I thought, okay, what can I do? What are my skill sets? What do I know how to do? What would help other people? What would help me? What could be something, at least something action oriented? That's a step, right? It may not be the solution, but like it's something, right? That could bring myself and other people joy and promote cross-cultural, intercultural, intersectional, understanding. And I've always used hip hop in that way, and even as part of the pedagogy, like in terms of like our program at Today's Future Sound, sampling, the sampling unit, I would always encourage kids, people to take pieces of their own cultural identity, whether it be, your ethnic background, where your family's from in the US, or where your family's from originally, if you're first generation this or that, or if you're bicultural, sample your background. Go ask your mom, your dad, your auntie, whoever, your tio, about a pre-1980 song that they love, and bring that in and sample it and flip it, because that was something that I did with my own kind of cultural identity. So let me bring this back. So thinking that's a really potentially powerful way that beat makers and record diggers, we can start to like connect to other cultures, and not only like music from the so-called Orient or Asian music, but music from around the globe, and as a cross-cultural kind of vision, a global beat cipher, where we sample a sample pack that exposes us to cultures and musics and genres and sounds, and maybe talk about where it's from, or learn more about it as we, as beat makers and diggers, are ethnomusic, what do you call it?
Ethnomusicologists.
Yeah, and like the dopest in the world, right? And like I could tell you who played jazz on so and so's, who played the bass on this jazz record, or who was the Buddy Miles, the drummer for Jimi Hendrix, and then put out Down by the River, so on and so forth. And like I can tell you about Hungarian psych rock, and I can relate to people from Iran, and or because I know about the Persian classics or pop classics like Gugush or Haida or whatever, right? I found that was a really powerful way to connect with people from other cultures and speak other languages. And I've always been about that.
To understand their music.
Yeah,
understand their music, and I love the fact that, and mind you, I don't get an opportunity to make a lot of beats these days. Like we kind of joked about at the beginning, but there's a beat. There's a big giant clump of samples that somebody puts together, and it is always ill as hell.
Yeah.
And the type of stuff that you can just kind of get lost in and make an EP worth of beats
straight up
out of, if you got the time to do it in the course of a week.
And that was the premise, right? I said, okay, if I died tomorrow from COVID, and I'd been hoarding all these samples on my hard drive and all the vinyl records that I have behind me, like my IKEA vinyl shelves, what use is that going to do the world or anyone? Like, who gives a fuck now? Like, why not share that shit? And so I didn't hoard my samples and made the world a better place. So I
agree.
I said, fuck it. I'm going to curate the dopest shit that normally I would have kept for myself that I wouldn't have told people about these samples from around the globe in service of someone hearing that and saying, oh shit, that's fucking fire. I need to make a beat out of that. So it's so dope that they can't resist it. And they're learning about, and I literally thought I was going like every continent, every country I could find, 60s, 70s, 40s, 50s. I tend to be a pre-80s person because I grew up, on the old school boom bap hip hop was sampling the 70s.
1968 through 1977 is the best time for music in the history of the world.
I agree. Disco, funk, rock, soul,
everything.
All of it. Yeah, analog meeting digital, kind of just the fringe of it. But
yeah.
So then I have an extensive music network, beatmaking network. I've traveled all over the world, put beat battles and beat ciphers and beat showcases like on every continent. You know what I mean? So I know people, and I also have technology and social media at my fingertips and all that shit. So okay, then I'm gonna leverage that, and I'm gonna try to get everyone I know, because we're all depressed, scared, isolated at home, to try to come together, and we get producers from all over the world flipping samples from all over the globe, making beats, engaging at least in like 5 hours of joy on a Saturday night.
Right.
You can't go out because there's curfew and you don't want to get sick or who knows. And I mean, at that time, I thought there was even maybe going to be like anarchy or chaos or, people were scared. Like, and I had friends who never owned a gun talking about, and it was all the things that intersected at one time, white supremacists and Trump, and it was terrifying, right? So at least giving some kind of haven, a virtual haven, and a virtual space, a cipher. Like my friend, made the argument that essentially we created the virtual park jam, right? To a certain extent. I don't know if it's exactly comparable or analogous, but
right,
people are getting down in the cipher, and people who are often hermits, beat makers can tend to be, like you were saying, hermits, and us can connect digitally, can be seen and heard, can be validated, can learn from each other, can learn about each other, can connect in a way that's non-threatening. That's also the premise of the therapeutic beat making model. Like,
absolutely it is.
It doesn't strip away your defenses. It allows you to do what you do in a meaningful way and self-regulate and be co-regulated, which is regulated by other people. Have your stress kind of chilled out by being around other people and beats and rhythms, and do it in a way that's dope. And then we started, the first thing I did on like Google Hangouts, it was super bootleg. I put my mic up to the speaker to play my beats. Then we started to figure out how to route sound into Zoom.
Yep.
And I had Creative Minds who do live streaming. Shout out Creative Minds. And Mike Molda and his brother helped us to live stream on multiple platforms, and we were beaming it out. And I still to this day, whoever has a paid promotion thing on my Instagram trying to sell me beats, or I make beats, or check me out, I will literally DM them and send them the flyer and send them the sample pack and the FAQ and be like, join us. And I found Urban Acoustics on Mario, what's his name? The dude that does polysymphonic sound library.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, it's ill. Anyway, dude lives in Tennessee. He's from Brooklyn. Super dope producer. So like, just, and that's my steez. Like,
what I see is being there at Global Cypher number 5, and then being there at Global Beat Cypher number 31, and then being at Global Beat Cypher 43, and kind of catching them here and there in the middle, because you West Coast and I go to bed. You know what I'm saying? I didn't used to go to bed when I used to make beats. I used to stay up 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
But I go to bed. So you on the West Coast, and as soon as you getting started, I'm in that mug like, woo. So saying all that to say, what I see now, being there last week, and I came last week because I wanted it to kind of inform this. I shared with you, I wasn't going to play nothing. I was just going to hang out for a minute.
Yeah.
There is a culture. There is a shared language. There is I don't want to say there's a pecking order, but there is a there are people who have been there for the majority of those 61 weeks is very evident. And there is a competitive element that I witnessed. I didn't see anything that was overtly aggressive, but there definitely is a desire to one up each other.
For sure. I mean, that's the competitive nature of
and the flips and stuff have become more complex, more artistic, more intricate. People are learning from each other.
100%.
People are asking questions, people are giving recommendations, people are doing all those things, and all those things are valuable in terms of creating something that people can gain from. And what it's doing is, and things like this is recreating, and just like the Griselda thing we saw, it's recreating how people interact with the culture using the technology. And it's extremely, extremely valuable for everybody who is involved. And I always say this again about I say this about Sidechain Society. I say this about, shout out to Tashira Say and Computer Music Academy. That's where I kind of got involved in it, and I mean where I came back to it, I should say. And you know, you're creating cultures you're creating subcultures within a subculture. Deserves to be looked at as being a model for how to construct how people who are engaging in STEM, for example, behave. Why can't you create a cipher like atmosphere around mechanical engineering?
Yeah, totally.
You know what I'm saying? So it's where hip hop is informing other stuff, and that's why I love it. That's why it's so fantastic. Real quick before we talk about the album, Poland. You're going to Poland.
Yeah, man. I'm excited.
In 2022.
Yeah, shout out Next Level Program.
Next Level Program. Shout out to Dr. View. Dr. View, going to Poland. Dr. View going to like Barbados.
Yeah,
like what part of the game is that? Like,
so they asked us to list our preferences.
Oh,
where we wanted to go. I want to go all those places. And in fact, I was in the first generation of the Next Level Program in 2015 with Junius Brickhouse, who's now the program director, and Tony Blackman, who's OG pioneered hip hop diplomacy, and DJ Chela. And so we went to Senegal. I was in Girouai. Fire. That was my first time in Africa. It was super dope. I met the 5-time best Senegalese producer of the year. This guy 814 Beats, who's an amazing producer. Like, God, and I would just meet up with him every day to collaborate with him, whether it was at the hotel or before we did program or wherever. Guy's incredible. He's also a really ill MC, and he raps in Wolof as well. Really like bars in Wolof. This guy's amazing. And his brother was really important in ousting 2 corrupt presidents, and it was a whole hip hop political movement. Shout out to my guy Papa Ali Gueye, who's a leader there at HipHop and Girouai HipHop, a hip hop cultural center. But I went there, and the same year I also had been building informally, doing my own version of hip hop and cultural diplomacy with a guy in Peru. And the same year I went to Peru. After 3 years of building with this guy virtually, figured out a way to get me down there, and my homie came down too, and we taught hip hop dancers, b-boys, b-girls, kids in the hood in Peru and Pachacutec and all around Lima, the greater Lima area. I ended up actually going to Brazil and hooking up with the homies at Casa Brasilis and Beat Brasilis in Sao Paulo as well. That was super dope. Brazil's crazy ill hip hop scene.
Is it true that as you travel around the world, I did a study about, or I did a research paper in my program about hip hop around the world as a module of acculturation in a way. So what I found was in the things that I read was that every culture takes particular elements of hip hop, and more specifically, essence-based elements of hip hop, the togetherness, the rhythm, the self-expression, the individuality, and they apply elements of their own culture to it. So their own culture shines through hip hop hip hop is still the medium, but it's very emblematic of where it comes from. And what it reminded me of is the fact that hip hop is a place that is very grounded in place.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a place-based.
Place and space, yeah.
It's a place and space-based. Place and space-based. It's a place-based art form. So that led me to learning more about place-based education.
Right.
So all those things are connected. So as you saw hip hop all over the world, what were some, and I think I already kind of answered my own question, but what were some things that you found that seem to be commonplace no matter where you go involving hip hop and cultural production?
I mean, I think I see like different versions of me and us, right?
Okay.
And you're like, he's a beat nerd just like me. Like he just loves this shit. He just loves this shit as much as I do. Or like you just see those people, you know, and in the context of their culture, in the context of hip hop culture, in the context of maybe even like they didn't grow up in hip hop culture per se, but they had a similar fascination. And I say this as like, you know, a white cisgender dude who grew up in New York City in an upper middle class or, you know, neighborhood and wasn't a native of the culture, but like you see yourself in it, you love it, and there's certain like classics, and like we all listen to Wu-Tang or like, you know,
standards and rules.
Yeah, exactly. And you see like I'm thinking of like my boy Ruido, Ruido Beats in at least, you know, Jalisco in Mexico, and like, you know, my homies in Australia who are beat nerds just like me, or in New Zealand, and God, New Zealand has some amazing producers. Or, you know, in El Salvador, where I've done a fair amount of work and where I helped like launch a program down there, like my dude Dr. Muluk, David, and Fausto, and like the homies down there, like, you know, and you see elements, you know, and that's a common human kind of thing. I think just, you know, you see yourself in others, but yeah, the love for hip hop and the things that we grew up on and the things that really moved us, especially if we're of similar generations, right? So I think I've seen that, and then, you know, it depends how much like mimicry is going on and how much authenticity and knowledge of self is shining through in terms of like, if someone knows and accepts and integrates themselves. And I think, you know, I had started to touch on that in terms of talking about like how we have kids sample their own cultures or backgrounds or whatever. That came out of me sampling like my ethnic cultural background being a Jew, right? And I was always kind of at odds with that and had this internalized self-hatred, like being Jewish, and shame around that, even though I went to a predominantly Jewish school in a very Jewish city with like the #1 population of Jews in the world, like more than Israel, like New York City. It's still like I had a like internalized kind of self-hatred and shame around that. And then in graduate school, I wrote a paper on it, but I also sampled Hava Nagila, which is a traditional like Israeli celebratory song. And it was like a 60s pop cover of it by a Canadian artist. And Decap and I flipped it, and we made a really dope remix. It's ill. This story's ill. Then this comes back to Peru. It got placed in a Yak Films video with little French kids breakdancing to it in the north of France. That then was jacked or ripped by this dude in Lima, Peru, who shot a video of the #1, you know, flatland BMX biker in South America doing flatland ill moves on the top of a mountain in Lima, Peru, and hit me up. It's like, hey, check out this video I made. Is it cool I used the beat? And so that led to the relationship that developed over 3 years that led to my going down to Peru and like working with an Argentinian popper and a Brazilian funk styles dancer in Lima, Peru, shooting music videos and performing on the top of that same mountain, you know, and then coming full circle back to the next level. That was the same year. It was like, I was really building towards that for the previous years. Dream. And like, that was a goal, is I'm going to take this shit international. I want to go international, and I have a vision and a purpose. And I know that hip hop is therapeutic, and I know that it's educational. I know it's cross-culturally powerful, and I want to take this international. And then next level, along with that Peruvian connection, enabled me to do that. And then now I'm coming back as a, you know, from the first generation now to this like 8th iteration of next level, going to Poland.
Well, that's good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I need an application for 2023.
I got you.
And you know, I've said it again, but music decorates time, and it does actually decorate space too, based around what we just talked about. And so I want to take a second and kind of take you back for a minute, and we're going to talk about November 24th, 1992.
Okay.
Where were you, and what were you?
November 4th,
24th.
24th, 1992.
That sounds like Thanksgiving, doesn't it? Like Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving
Time.
1992. I'm going to be probably in 5th or 6th grade.
Right.
91 to 92 is 4th grade. 92 to 93 is 5th grade. 5th grade
Something
was
like that.
Scenario, Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah.
What was that? So 91, 4th grade, 92. 4th or 5th grade. Maybe I've heard Vanilla Ice. Maybe we'll have just heard Scenario and seen it on MTV. Maybe we'll have just seen Insane in the Membrane and decided that I really need to get Union Bay baggy jeans from the mall in Cape Cod. But
so this is like directly in between Low End Theory and Midnight Marauders. Midnight Marauders being November 93. Low End Theory being, I want to say 1991. 1991 being what it was, what it meant for hip hop, with NWA's Niggas for Life and Ice Cube and DJ Quick. I think Way Too Funky came out in 91. So the West Coast was being defined by a particular sound this was right, like maybe just a couple of weeks after the Chronic came out, maybe.
And the Chronic had a massive impact, right?
Oh man, don't we gonna talk about my next podcast is about the Chronic. Shout out to Dot Gang. We're gonna be talking about the Chronic probably this coming Sunday. But saying all that to say,
yeah,
Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde comes out on November 24th, 1992, and I have a question for you.
Thanksgiving in New York,
right, maybe cold,
cold,
whatever.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, let's kind of start here. If it wasn't for this album, what may we have ended up not getting in the future after this album came out?
I mean, very retro speculative here, but
yeah. That's what this is all about.
If this album didn't come out like historically and in terms of hip hop,
yes. What's the significance?
I mean, so if you think about like who the Pharcyde is, where they're positioned, what genre they are, it's like how do you categorize them? Are they like a West Coast KMD?
What a fantastic question.
Like meets I don't know, like De La Soul.
So in the West Coast during this time, 1992, there's a counterculture that's developed. This counterculture involves groups like the Freestyle Fellowship.
That's straight up. Like that's like what would we have without Freestyle Fellowship?
Dale, the Funky Homo Sapien.
Yeah.
You have
Hyro,
Hyro coming around. And being able to give a more complex version, because I was 15 when it came out. And so I'm knee deep in complete hip hop culture. Shout out to Quentin Wright, my cousin. My cousin was straight West Coast, loved everything West Coast ever. So not only did we have the NWAs and the Compton's Most Wanted and things of that, those ilk kind of popping up, Threat, the Lynch Mob, all those things kind of popping up, but you had a lot of offshoots from those as well. You had the less prominent, you had the Booyah Tribe, you had Cypress Hill's first album, you had first and second album.
Cypress Hill's first album,
right. You had Cool G Rap and DJ Polo's Live and Let Die album that had very clear West Coast relationships. A lot of it being very breakbeatish, and a little bit of funk involved.
But like Ice Cube getting produced by a Bomb Squad, right?
Absolutely. Now that was 1991. That was 91, and then Kill It Will, and then I want to say, and don't quote me, but Death Certificate was right around the time at which this came out. I have to look because I won't be able to sleep until I find out.
By the way, Doggy Style, and KMD Black Bastards would be close seconds or other candidates for my, ones that I didn't pick, but would be like, those are some of my best produced albums of all time, like hip hop albums.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Death Certificate came out in 1991, and America's Most Wanted came out in 1990 then. So when you talk about Doggy Style, unpopular opinion alert, I think Doggy Style is a better album than The Chronic.
Yep, I agree.
So Pharcyde came out at a time where the thing that we all talk about when we romanticize the 90s to a degree, I wouldn't say we romanticize it, but the fact that there's so much variety. Mm-hmm. And so the first single for Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde was Yo Mama.
So good.
So my first interaction with the Pharcyde was Yo Mama.
Yeah.
And to me, that song kind of provided the center for where they were in a way, because they were clearly and obviously different. Much of the production, including Yo Mama, including all the other songs, is very highly based around break beats, slow down samples, jazz samples, this, that, and the third. Shout out to Jay Swift. And that's just what it comes down to. Another thing that this highlighted for me was the value of interludes and skits.
Yes.
In projects to provide a kind of context throughout. And it sounds very jazzy. It sounds like Freestyle Fellowship.
It does. Because
in a way,
Cafe, man, they came out of Good Life, which later led to Project Blow.
Absolutely. So that very jazzy, those interludes, those skits, things of that nature. I do want to talk about one thing in particular from a production standpoint. Like, if you know about mixing, you know about how complex and how difficult it can be to make sure that vocals cut a certain way without making vocals too loud. You still make it cut. So at this time, you had people like DJ Quick. You had a few people whose voices were on the higher side, Eazy-E. Mm-hmm. People whose voices were on the higher register, like the higher side. And so, Be Real. So here you have Booty Brown and Amani.
He prefers to be called Brown now, from what I'm
okay. Told. He's gonna be Booty Brown for today.
Yo, and shout out to Brown.
Peace to Brown. We gonna honor him and call him Brown. Yeah. But
and he puts us on shout out Pharcyde TV and Organic Beat Sessions.
So Brown and Amani, both of them, from a voice perspective, their voices cut because of where they were in the frequency band, and it instantly grabs your attention when somebody's voice is that high on a real bass heavy beat like that.
Yeah.
So that's what caught me about Yo Mama. That's what caught me about. That's what made Passing Me By one of the greatest rap songs ever written, ever created. But we'll talk about that in a second. However, go ahead.
Oh no! I'm just saying. I'm pulling my notes about like all the different. Tracks and, yeah.
No doubt. So there's still a positionality that's being expressed, and this is 30 years ago. And there's songs like Officer,
straight up.
And it's not from the perspective of stop killing me.
Yeah.
It's more from the perspective of just leave me alone. And when you pull me over, one lyric said, I didn't write the lyric down, but it talked about, I'm gonna put my glasses on. I'm going to I'm going to try to at least express an image that is different than what I am in order for you to hopefully see me different, which just kind of points out the subjectivity that is involved sometimes when African Americans deal with the police. So those themes are still existing. Another one that really clearly illustrated positionality was the skit is Jigaboo Time.
Yep, 100. I was gonna say the amount of like minstrel kind of references and jazz, and also like blurring it with like and moving over to like the Louis Armstrong imitation.
Yes,
it's such incredible like social critique and satire. And look at the album artwork.
So even when you look at the album artwork, and this is what I'm kind of getting at, like it's fun. It's Yo Mama, Other Fish. With shout out to Slim Kid Trey. Slim Kid Trey was really singing and harmonizing when he rhymed too.
You gotta hear
as a precursor to a lot of people.
The
Say what?
Remix is fire, and they're singing even more on it, and the beat might be even
right.
original.
I mean, she said. I mean, we ain't even gonna talk about Labincalifornia, which was my joint. You said you wasn't feeling it like you was feeling this.
I'm unorthodox, man, and I'm old school, and I like that West Coast fucking Cypress Hill shit, and Pharcyde and Latyrix, Chief Excel, Black Delicious, Souls and Mischief, shout out Homie A+, and Pep Love and all of them. Casual, right. But severely underrated as an MC.
Absolutely. But one thing we always do is that, and I should have did this earlier, we look at cover art. And although I think when you consider what this cover art is really saying, Pharcyde on the surface is it's a fun. When we heard Your Mama, we heard songs like Soul Flower, it's very fun.
Yeah,
it's very fun. But in actuality, there is when you get on a roller coaster, there's also a fear that's involved.
100%.
And I think that there's a darkness. There's a darkness in this as cover art that kind of belies, that provides like a subtext under some of the more jovial things that were being done. And it's funny how, songs like the Soul Flower remix and Your Mama was the first single, and I can completely see that being Delicious Vinyl.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Making that decision. Because it's completely palatable. It's fun. It's this. It's that. It's a video that's kind of fun, and it's that and the third.
I hadn't even seen the video. I heard the song, and I was like, "Yo, this is fire." The lyrics are funny. And it takes an idiom or like a popular kid concept and disc concept and makes a fucking song out, like a whole piece.
Right. And your mama and the dozens and stuff like that. That is to a degree, it's a rite of passage in the African American community. It's also a technique that is used to develop mental toughness around men. It's a very masculine thing. Mm-hmm. We used to say there were dudes that could rap. It was dudes that could hoop. It was dudes that could cut hair. It was dudes that could do backflips, and it was dudes that could bake. And if you could bake, you know what I'm saying, that meant that you could stang somebody, real bad.
Yeah.
And so that harkens back to masculine culture, to the signifying monkey, to things that exist within African American culture for a very long time. And I felt like it kind of in a way was the center of the album because the song, through the use of the break beats, through the use of the samples, the jazzy samples, it is very connected to times past.
Mm-hmm.
In a similar fashion to what Low End Theory was, but in a way that's a little bit different. Before, I know we're going to talk about Passing Me By, but what other things kind of poked out to you from a song perspective that you kind of wanted to just speak to?
All right. Well, overall, right? To me, and people would debate this, but it's one of, if not the best, rapped albums in terms of cadence, intonation, style. Like, it's not Big Daddy Kane, right? It's not the East Coast like Big L bulleted, multisyllabic rhyme schemes where you're hitting, at the end of the line, or internal rhyme scheme like Biggie. But the way they're rapping and the intonation and the style, and that's what. Isn't that what KRS once said? He said the East invented it, the West decorated it, and like Freestyle Fellowship, their style is crazy. And they pioneered freestyling, right? And these guys were hanging out around them at the Good Life Cafe and Project Blowed. So you have the cadences and the delivery, how they're rapping. And they're rapping fast, but not in the East Coast flippity dippity DOS effects way exactly.
Right.
Like, it's like working it like West Coast, like pop locking or locking, and
right.
It's funny, it's real, it's authentic. Like Passing Me By is an authentic, vulnerable song. Plenty of Fish kind of borders, it straddles that, right? So there's vulnerability, and there's also the inverse, the opposite of that, the grandiosity as well.
Right.
The other side, the hyperbole, right, and the ridiculousness and the satire. It's jazzy. It's storytelling. It's really dope storytelling.
It is.
It's really dope.
It is.
Like, oh shit, and they talk about what almost hooking up with a tranny, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yo,
they
like,
absolutely did.
How real and how funny and how, but and that's humor. It's taking the terror, the underlying terror, or fear, or anxiety that things cause us, and then flipping it into a way that's digestible and that bubbles to the surface. And I mean, I'm kind of referencing Freud's theory of humor here, but but it's also it's amazing, and they got fucking killer choruses. Your mom's so fat. How fat is she? Oh shit! It's the kind of right. With your boys or with whoever, and like just
right,
and then passing me by. I mean, you can play that in a club, and people will fucking sing along with that, just like she said, and running. But,
she said it was on Lab Cabin.
Yeah, and so running away, but like that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Okay.
Like 1 minute and 10 seconds in, there's a change up that is so fucking raw. That shit is so raw. It just makes me want to make a boom bap beat like that. I'm like, whoa, there's 3 different parts. Jay Swift is whatever, if he was using ASR 10 or an MPC or whatever, that man, his ear for loops and break beats and samples.
Yes.
I don't know who did the scratches, but the scratches are ill too on here. And they're well placed. They're not overdone. They're like accents, right? They're well placed. You got for better or for worse, the change ups.
That's before you leave that. That's the best to me. That's the tightest beat on the record.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse.
Huh.
I mean, passing me by is different. But for better or for worse is the tightest beat on the record.
But like listening back to it, I remember that I was like, oh yeah, that change up's real fire. I'm not as into the first part of the beat. I appreciate that it's dope, but the change up, I think there's 2 more change ups in it, and that happens in several beats. Like that's dope in 92, 93.
Yes.
Change ups, because you don't have the RAM to have like more than 10 seconds or.
Yes, that's big.
Right?
The bass line in For Better or For Worse is
bass line on so many tracks is so, and like, dude, I'm telling you, listen to the Your Mama remix. Is fire.
I will.
It's so. Can I play? I can't play it. Will you get sued if I play it over my phone?
You can't play it. We want people to visit the music on their own.
It's on vinyl. The 12-inch is fire. I can't say the last word, but I'm the type of that song.
Yeah.
It's braggadocious. It's funny. The breaks. The breaks that they're using are hard as fuck.
Can I say something real quick about the breaks? Soulfly remix. That's on the same beat as Pure Righteousness by Lakim Shabazz, which is a sample of Put Your Love In My Tender Care by the Fatback Band. And it's that sound that go it's that. I love it. I love it.
It's perfect. And the way that he layers stuff
all over
layers. Like
your mama used synthetic substitution.
Yeah. And everyone loved that at that time, right? That was the thing. Soulflower, Summer, the use of Summer in the City for Passing Me By is perfect. The artwork, I saw Pharcyde perform in 99 or 2000 or something like that at UC Santa Barbara, where I went to college. And I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I saw an SP1200 or an Ensoniq, the SP1200 on stage. They were like using that, I want to say. And that was before I really knew kind of what it was exactly, but I kind of had an idea, I saw the back of it from the audience on stage next to the turntables. I thought that was dope, especially if they really were rocking with the SP1200 live. Your Mama, they made a song out of it. Come on, man. And the beat fire, packed bro. How perfect is that beat for the content? Like talking about being like too high, and the line about forks and spoons is perfect. Like that's a perfect description of like, it's like you pull out your parachute and like it has forks and spoons in it, right? Like just being so high and falling. It's cartoonish, but it also it captures the essence of like what it's like in a really like physical kind of. I'm missing the word right now, but like a really, you can really feel it. Like it's really like space. The chorus of Officer, please don't pull me over, Mr. Officer. Please don't pull me over, Mr. Officer. Please. I mean, it's catchy. Their choruses are amazing.
Yes, it's great songwriting. It's great songwriting for rap songs. You said it. You said that at the beginning. It's great. It's great songwriting.
It's thematic. There's the interweaving of the skits throughout, which are fun and which Jigaboo Time and the way it tackles minstrel. I can't say it, but like the whole minstrel thing and stereotypes. Quentin's on his way. It's a fucking like 2-minute jazz.
Yeah. It's all great.
He's coming. That's like your boy's coming through with like the cess, with like the weed, like the dope, and like being a kid in college. Like, oh shit, they're coming through it. Like, you right? Or like I used to order in like the latter part of high school, we had delivery services like in Half Baked, like in New York City. And so I call Mellow Man, get a 2 G's of like, bomb ass crystal laden Cali weed or whatever. And, the dude comes in with his fanny pack on a bike, right. You tell your doorman, hey, it's my buddy.
Like Half Baked. I want to talk to Samson.
Dude, it straight up like that's just for real. That like how many unit you call up, you hit the pager, they call you back. How many units? 1 unit, 2 units, whatever, right? One, it's like 2 grams is like 1 unit.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. The scratch, like I said. Yeah. And Return to the B-Boy. I mean, it's like a throwback 80s jam and like throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just right. That
absolutely. So let's talk about Passing Me By. For me, unpopular opinion. Passing Me By is one of the most well-constructed rap songs of all time. Like, if a person came from outer space and they wanted to understand what hip-hop is to me, like if I wanted to teach them what hip-hop is, I would play Passing Me By. And I'm going to tell you why. The static in the sample the static in the loop is perfect.
It indicates
because it feels it goes boop 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 boop. It's perfectly placed.
It's meta, yeah.
And then you have the break starts a beat early before the verse, which is indicative of, for me, what Q-Tip brought to the game. And then the first person you hear rhyme is in my younger years, use this water sack, cutting through the mix.
Cutting through it, yeah.
Instantly has you. Great verse. The verse as it ends, even though his voice is up like that, it ends sadly.
Yeah.
And then the chorus comes in. And the hook is what the hook is. It's imperfect.
Yeah,
because obviously you're not a great, he's not a great vocal singer, and then Slim Kid Trey's verse comes in. There's no drums, there's just a sample, and then that same thing happens where that snare comes in early. Slim Kid Trey has a very balancing perspective on the beat, and then it goes into the second hook. Then there's like a little bridge to kind of, there's a little bridge with the doom 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 doom. Without the sample in it.
A little bridge, like it's a bonus beat. It's like
it's a little bridge, and then Fat Lip ends it with a fantastic story, and the texture represents the time period so well. The video was ill as fuck. They're upside down, and I think that the imagery of them being upside down represents how they are different than what was going on the West Coast at that time. They were what the West Coast was known for. It's not vivid, it's not beautiful. They're not, they're not dressed up with gold chains and big muscles, and this image of masculinity has always been aggressive and this, that, and the third. They were being extremely vulnerable. They were talking about times that they got dissed by females, and that's far more relatable than I get every bitch I come across.
Right. And dude, what's his name? I sampled for Global Beat Cypher. I sampled Fat Lip it was a documentary about him or something like that, maybe that Spike Jonze did, where he talks about how they just used to go to clubs to go dancing, like the Pharcyde, and they said it was all about the beats. Right. And I sampled that because dude, that's, to me, that's like, this is beats and rhymes, but this is the album that I think is the most consistently dope production through and through that I can listen to through, where I wouldn't skip tracks on my CD player, or Like it's it's a fucking record, man. It's a conceptual album. It's consistency in aesthetics, in themes, but it goes through all the different, like from being hyperbolically, grandiose and invincible, I'm the type of that, to Passing Me By, which is about being vulnerable, being rejected,
yes,
being stereotypically, masculine, desirable, winner, whatever. And that shit's relatable. Everyone can relate to that, right?
Everyone.
Yeah. And relate to like rejection, and relate to depression, relate to like longing, childhood longing, like your teacher / mother figure, right?
Yes.
The apple, because I knew I'd get a kiss. Always got mad when class was dismissed. I mean, that's real. Your childhood. I remember having a crush on my kindergarten teacher and thinking, beautiful woman in the world, and like I really like wanted her, for lack of a better. But like, it's the childhood. I think that perspective is interesting because I believe he's talking about being closer. I was in kindergarten. He's like probably 10 or 11. But it's like, it's kind of borderline childhood sexuality, but it's like this burgeoning pre-adolescent sexuality, or kind of, the beginning of that, and these feelings of like yearning and love and desire, that's really tangible, that speaks to like the everyday, human experience and existence.
Right. And I think even the second verse is not just necessarily, the woman that is just out of touch, the woman that is just out of grasp, per se, or you can't, the one that you can't figure out, the one that, you know what I'm saying, and we all have that woman, the one that we just could not figure it out, and so I think without a Passing Me By, you don't have what we hear from people like Drake. J. Cole. And I'm really, that's a really far jump. No. But we don't hear songs talking about, you don't hear some of the things that DMX talked about. You don't hear some of the things that Kendrick Lamar addresses on Fear in on Down. You don't.
Soul would be like one group that also would be really pivotal, and like rapping about your social worker.
Absolutely.
About, Millie pulled a pistol on Santa, and like Tupac, of course, as well, right?
But De La Soul, the thing I say about De La Soul, which shouts out to Posdnuos, is probably one of the most underrated MCs of all time, at least. Oh, man. And that's no deference to Trugoy either. But De La Soul was they had very intellectual messaging. Like they were it's very conversational, but there's a lot of overtones that are involved, and there's a lot of undertones, I should say. This is very straight. This is very straight up. This album is very straight up. And the other thing I want to talk about with the song, especially with Passing Me By, is the way in which they were able to EQ break beats with the static, with the vocals, and make sure everything cut in its own place.
And they sampled, like, that's the dopest sample. Like, the only comparable, like, that came after it, song that really compares, that I hold in really high esteem, is Nightmares on Wax, Nuit, right? Which is the same Quincy Jones Summer in the City sample, and is beautiful. Those are two different ways that a hip hop producer could use it for vocal and non-vocal, and use what is probably like the perfect sample, right?
Right. And
you're not touching the timbre of that like organ. The strings, it's you can feel it. It's a hot sunny night, in Flint or New York City or Compton or wherever, right? And it's just like, it's visceral. That's the word I was looking for before. It's visceral. Okay. And there's something about that atmosphere that it creates, the place, the space, right? Because everyone, who can sing along with that song probably has some kind of visceral memory and bodily feeling, and like an emotional connection to like yearning, lust, jealousy, whatever, like, and their crush or their desired, and their childhood experience or their grown-up experience in romantic situation. And it contrasts those, and the beat is perfect. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. in listening to it now, after all that we have heard, it is a perfect example of a rap song from an arrangement standpoint, from even the way in which the verses are sequenced is perfect. And then, like you talked about, the texture of the sample, it feels like you can touch it. Yeah. And that, I mean, that's completely, from a music production standpoint, I know to people who not into that, it sounds completely weird. But those of us who enjoy music production on that level, it appears to us in a number of different senses. It's like something you taste, it's something that you see, it's something that you can touch, you know, and that's just the way that it is. And you just got to deal with us being strange like that.
It's thick.
Yes. Pause.
With 2 C's.
Yes.
No
yes.
Pause. I don't do pause.
Okay.
Fast forward. Play or whatever.
Fast forward. Okay. Even better. All right. So for the people, you know, for our people, go back and listen to this record. Go back and listen to it. You know, feel free to, you know, tag me, go to Zero Noize Podcast, tag me in your thoughts about it. You know, we're going to be, once we post this or whatever, you listen to it, make sure that you post up your thoughts about it. What I like to do before we take off, what I always like to do, Mr. Philip Drummond, is to, I want to give you a chance to give all your plugs before we shake the spot.
Cool. Thanks, man. So first and foremost, I'd say, check out Today's Future Sound and hashtag Global Beat Cypher. You see it spelled out here. You can put that in any search engine, any social media. You'll find what you need to find. But every Saturday night, 7 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. EST, 12 p.m. I think 8 EST, which is like Australian East Coast time. We do it every Saturday, like clockwork. Everyone's welcome. Free sample pack is up. We just put one up tonight. Shout out DJ Prominent. We got special guests, curated beat makers, beat-related stuff, hip-hop therapy, hip-hop education related, you know, hip-hop culture, beat culture stuff. Come nerd out with us. It's a 5-hour stream. At Today's Future Sound on Instagram and most platforms, at TFS_beats. You can find me at Philip Drummond or at Filthy Drummond with a PH. You know, I got records out there, music and stuff. But man, Today's Future Sound, we bring, you know, beats to everyone we can, especially to the youths around the world. You know, just trying to share the love for hip hop culture.
Look at you, man. Them. Yeah.
Put it at people's fingertips. So come join us. We're doing a 2-day Beats Festival. We have folks from the Global Beat Cypher from the East Coast and Southern California coming out for a 2-day festival, June 5th in Oakland at 7 West. Daytime festival, 12 to 5 p.m. Open Beat Cypher, Beat Battle, bracketed tournament Beat Battle, and Clash of the Titans, Soul City versus Urban Acoustics, and Will Randolph V versus SP the Soul Prophet. SP404 battle. That's gonna be fire. And if you think that beat battles can't be violent, you got to watch a Will Randolph V beat battle. Go check it out on our Today's Future Sound youtube.com/Today's Future Sound. My man is crazy talented and crazy in the beat battles. It becomes like URL or Smack or whatever up in these beat battles when Will's there. So shout out to him. And
shout out to the beat battle culture as a whole, man. I'm anxious to see that get back popping after, you know, this foolishness get done with.
Oh, we're doing it right now outside, socially distanced.
I'm in Michigan. We've been, you know, we had to go we had to go back through the scourge.
I know.
For about a month and a half. So, you know, we just now, you know, poking our heads up. So you know, people planning stuff. That's cool.
Come on out, and we're doing the second days in San Francisco at local Maker Mart, June 6th. It's going to be beats for brunch, you know, in the morning, in the afternoon. It's a 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come get lunch, drinks, chill. It's all ages, outside, socially distanced. We got folks coming from all over, and once the borders open up with Canada and other places, our Canadian brethren in Toronto and elsewhere, we're going to do it in New York, have the Torontonians come on down and elsewhere. But yeah, we're going to Puerto Vallarta next week. We're about to get a pop in there. Get the Mexicano, you know, beat making homies. Shout out DJ Stress and Ruido Lo-Fi and everyone around the world. Much love to you all. Beat culture, beats. I'm about it. Check it out. And yeah, we got these t-shirts and fire hats, bucket hats. We got 5 panels, sports nonprofit. Go to today'sfuturesound.bigcartel.com. Go cop yourself some gear. Windbreakers, t-shirts, brand new limited drops, boutique stuff for the beat nerds and the beat culture heads.
the psychologist,
Yeah.
lecturer,
Therapeutic Beatmaking. Check it out.
the
And
nonprofit leader, the hustler,
I'm a hustler.
content creator, Dr. Elliot Gann. Thank you for coming and joining with us. We need everybody to like, share, and subscribe. I probably should have been saying that all throughout. I hate that, but I mean, I guess that's how you get your numbers up.
Like, share, subscribe, and we're gonna have you this Saturday.
I am
Global Beat Cypher number 62.
I am going to be on the Beat Cypher this week, and I am, after I leave here, I am about to go grab that pack. If it's already posted, I'm gonna go ahead and grab that pack and see if I can jump in. Yeah, like, share, and subscribe. And no matter where you are, we are across all streaming platforms in audio, and we're on YouTube. We need you to support all over the place. Quick shouts out real quick to Grove Studios, again, grovestudios.space, as well as leonspeakers.com for their support. We always want to shout out the Amplify Fellowship, amplify-fellowship.com, where we provide musicians with production, recording, and engineering support in exchange for the support of community organizations through volunteerism. So we're really happy about what we've done there. We're going to keep that moving as well. Thank you for all of our support. Shout out to phonics.com. Go ahead and check that God's Favorite Drums 1 and 2. Also go to Digital Hustle Films. They run weekly beat contests that run on Sundays now too.
Digital Hustle, that's who it was.
That's my man. Shout out to Gadget. Shout out to the Dirty Old Men. Shout out to the entire squad. Shout out to Double Negative People.
Yeah.
And until next time, this is Rob Wallace again with the Zero Noise Podcast. Support the artists and the artisans around you, because if the music stops, everything else does. Peace. Have a great day. Be cool.